Hello guys, welcome to my channel. The less is more. So today we will discuss an editorial from Indian Express, and it is about ecology, environment, plants, right? So let's start an editorial. The title of the editorial is We the People and Plants and Animals. We the People and Plants and Animals. Don't you think it seems more like a preamble of India, right? What will be the history of India without its trees? So let's start. Okay, so I arrived in India like the way I arrived into language, late. Statistically, India was 27 years old when I came into the world, but to me it seemed that it was as old as language. I thought of it as a child as a parent. I thought of it as a child as a parent. That is, I didn't think of it at all. Child does a parent. Like child doesn't think of it at all. Child doesn't think of parent. Every year I heard the same sounds around the time of its birthday. Every year I heard the same sounds around the time of its birthday. I misunderstood August occasion as being related to August 15, about its greatness and how much it still needed to do. I think I equated them with the things I think I equated them with the things children were told on their birthdays. As I moved swiftly from young adulthood to the world, the Indian state began to lose its shyness. As the child becomes more younger and more adult, it loses its shyness, and same happened with the Indian state began to lose its shyness. While its citizens took to anti-aging creams, India, that is Indian culture, began to change its birth certificate to imply that it was almost as old as time. Ministers started speaking about a golden age where surgery, flying machines, and telecommunication were available much before the invention in the modern world. That was their ambition to recreate that India. But I did not encounter any such atavism urge in relation to the plant world. So here the author is saying that the what we are recreating or reimagining India as old as the golden sparrow, right? So right now ministers and all whole India is ready to make India again a golden sparrow as she was before in ancient times, right? So that is our ambitions, okay, but the author is saying that she did not encounter any such atavistic urge in relation to the plant world. So in all terms we want our India to be a golden sparrow again, that is Sone ki chidiya, but this is these we might not encounter into the plant world. I think of citizens without Aadhaar card, those without life insurance and crematoriums, those not on the nation's census rolls, that is our plant life. So, citizens without Aadhaar card, life insurance and crematoriums, and those not on the nation's census, that is whom? The plant life. In the 75th year of Indian independence, Siliguri, the sub-Himalayan Bengal town from where I am writing this, lost almost its trees on the national highway. That is NH10 that connects Bagdogra, its airport suburb, to Sikkim. The town's residents probably hear the sound of the electric saw in their sleep now. So, town's residents are probably hearing the sound of the electric saw in their sleep. The tree genocide, that is called tree genocide. The indiscriminate murder of young and old, that is indiscriminate murder of young and old of all kinds of plant species. Murder of young and old, all kind of plant species, on the same road where these trees give shade and shelter to humans protesting against the CAA or NRC. For instance, there is nothing and no protest on their behalf. I do not know of anyone who has been on that road without feeling something collapsing inside them. It's not a catch in the throat, it's a scratch on the nervous system that we in shorthand are calling life. Emptiness is harder to imagine than God or ghost. Emptiness is what? Harder to imagine than God or ghost on this road. As in thousands of such places in India today, we are hit by this emptiness. It has the violence of an accident, like a moment before death. I think of Will Matsuda writing about the trees of Hiroshima, the ginkgo trees. In Japanese, in Japanese, human survivors of the atom bomb are called hibakusha. These surviving trees have a name as well, hibakujumoku. What will we call? What will we call our trees in India that we killed by becoming the equivalent of atom bombs? What will we call our trees in India that we killed by becoming the equivalent of atom bombs? The first page of Vibhuti Bhushan Bandyopadhyay's novel Ichamati begins. Vibhuti Bhushan's Bandyopadhyay's novel Ichamati begins with a revolutionary formulation of history. Both history and itihas derive etymologically from an investment in the human, the story or narrative of person's life. From asti, meaning he is. Vibhuti Bhushan challenges that take a boat from Morighata or Bajitpur right up to Chanduriya Ghat and you shall see the bright red flowers of the polti and madar trees on either bank, the aquatic foliage of the baniburo, the radiance of the yellow flowers of the wild titpala creeper and the floating leaves of topapana. Sometimes along a high bank you will spy shrubs of uluti bachda and bainchi in the shadow of ancient banyan and peepal trees, the nesting holes of river mynas, and everywhere the pleasing spread of creepers and all manner of greens. From one century to another, many are the unwritten histories of joy and sorrow that lie on their breasts, like the tracery of lines of water in the rains. From one century to another, many are the unwritten histories of joy and sorrow that lie on their breasts, like the tracery of lines of water in the rains. Their voices, their stories are the real history of our nation. Their voices, their stories are the real history of our nation. The history of plant life records of its settlement on land as well as its death and evacuation from these species, a census of plant and trees. All these constitute our national history, not only the life of kings, queens, and the famous. Vibhuti Bhushan is writing this in a novel published in 1950, the year India becomes a republic and gives to itself its constitution, and decades before the formation of the subaltern collective. 75 years later, these words read like a preamble to an Imagine India. Okay. Of what might have been had this understanding of national history been institutionalized. So, 75 years later, these words read like a preamble to an image in India of what might have been had this understanding of national history been institutionalized. What we have instead is only a generational memory of plants whose names one must memorize but whose life and life cycles we know little about. What we have instead is only a generational memory of plants whose names one must memorize but whose life and life cycles we know little about. Vibhuti Bhushan is documenting plant life with the kind of intimacy that Kalidas does in Ritu Sambhara, both aware of the passing of a world that would henceforth be recoverable only second hand. What will be the history of India without its trees, without the history of its plant life? So, what will be the history of India without its trees, without the history of its plant life? Imagining my country as a centenarian. I hope for this kind of history, for Itihas to move beyond the human story. I hope for fundamental rights for plants and all living forms. I imagine a preamble that begins, "We the people and plants and animals of India," imagining my country as a centenarian. I hope for this kind of history for Itihas to move beyond the human story. I hope for fundamental rights for plants and all living forms. I imagine a preamble that begins, "We the people and plants and animals of India." So, this was all for today, and in this article, the author is saying that why the history of our plant is important, and we should include our plant as a citizens as well, right, so that they can get some fundamental rights, because the plants are also considered as life on the earth, right? So, and there is nothing much more. This is a kind of a editorial which will improve your language and the flow, right? This will help you in essay, right? Emptiness is harder. Then you can quote this Will Matsuda, who has written about Japanese, right? Okay. Okay. So this was for today. Bye bye guys. Signing off for the day.